Today, we're going to look at how an AI can learn to be an artist. Or maybe a better way to put it is an expert art forger. We're diving into the tech that lets a computer literally imagine things it has never, ever seen before.
You know, it's a really interesting question, right? I mean, we spend all this time teaching computers how to recognize things like, hey, that's a cat in that photo. But how on earth do you teach one to imagine a cat? Or in our case today, a completely new handwritten number that no one has ever written before?
Well, the secret is this really brilliant kind of competition. This system, which is called a Generative Adversarial Network, or GAN for short, basically pits two AIs against each other in this high-stakes game of deception until one of them becomes an absolute master forger.
And that's the key term here, an adversarial process. In other words, this is not about two AIs holding hands and cooperating. Nope. This is a rivalry, a constant competition that forces both of them to get incredibly good at what they do.
So to really get how this all works, we need to meet our two rivals. I want you to think of them as an AI art forger and an expert art critic, locked in this endless battle of wits.
So, here's the crucial point. It all boils down to this. You have two players in this game. The generator is our art forger. It's trying to create paintings so convincing they could pass for the real deal. And then you've got the discriminator. That's our expert art critic, whose entire job, its whole purpose, is to tell the real masterpieces from the fakes.
All right, so to see how this rivalry actually plays out, we need to understand what each of these AIs is actually trying to do. Because, you see, their goals are completely 100% opposite.
I mean, just look at this. This table just lays out how perfectly opposed they are. You've got the generator, our artist, starting with basically a blank canvas of random noise, and it's trying desperately to create a masterpiece. Its only goal in life is to fool the discriminator. Meanwhile, the critic has studied a whole gallery of real images. It knows the real stuff inside and out, and its only job is to shout real or fake. They are fundamentally at odds with each other.
So what you end up with is, well, it's the ultimate training environment. This isn't just about learning in a vacuum. It's a relentless competition where the only way to survive is to get better.
And this creates this incredibly powerful feedback loop. Think about it. Every single time the generator creates a fake that's just a little more convincing, it forces the discriminator to get smarter, to find new, more subtle flaws. But then, every time the discriminator gets better at its job, it sends the generator back to the drawing board, forcing it to become an even more sophisticated artist. They're just locked in this upward spiral of constant improvement.
And this is the engine that drives that whole rivalry. It's this simple four-step loop that just repeats thousands or even millions of times. The generator makes a fake. The discriminator judges it. They both get a score. And then, and this is the most important part, they both learn from their mistakes and repeat the whole process. Step 4, learn. That's where the magic really happens. After every single round, they get a little bit smarter for the next one.
So when does all this stop? When does the game finally end? Well, it happens when the generator gets so good, so unbelievably good at its job that the discriminator is basically just flipping a coin. Its accuracy at spotting the fakes drops to about 50-50, and at that exact moment, you know the forger has become a master. The training is complete.
Okay, so that's the theory, right? But what does this actually look like when the rubber meets the road? Let's take a look at a real GAN that was trained on thousands of handwritten digits and actually watch this learning process for ourselves.
So this is ground zero. This is where it all begins. The generator is given what's called a random seed, and it produces an image that looks like pure TV static. There's no structure, no intelligence, nothing. This is the blank canvas before our forger has learned a single thing.
Now, the system goes through that training loop again and again and again. In the machine learning world, they call one full pass through all the training data an epoch. In this case, the AI went through 50 epochs, and with every single one, the generator got just a little bit closer to figuring out what a number is supposed to look like.
And check this out. This is partway through the training. You can already see it, can't you? It's not just random static anymore. There's kind of this ghost of a structure starting to form in there. The AI is beginning to understand the fundamentals, the curves, the lines, the general shapes. It's learning. And then you get this, the grand finale. On the left, you've got that meaningless random noise we started with. But on the right, wow, these are the final results after 50 rounds of that intense training. And remember, these are not copies of numbers it has seen before.
These are entirely new creations, imagined into existence from nothing but static. All thanks to that crazy adversarial game.
Okay, so making fake numbers is pretty cool, I'll admit it. But what's the big takeaway here? Why is this idea so powerful? Why does this matter?
So let's just break it down. What have we really learned? The absolute magic here is using competition as a teacher. By pitting these two AIs against each other, the artist and the critic, you create this self-correcting system that literally forces itself to get better and better. And that is the key that unlocks an AI's ability to not just recognize stuff, but to actually generate completely new, totally believable content, all from scratch.
And you gotta understand, this technique isn't just for numbers, not by a long shot. You can train this on pretty much any data set you can imagine. If you feed it thousands of photos of human faces, it learns to generate these photorealistic portraits of people who have never existed. The fundamental principle of the forger versus the critic, it's exactly the same.
And all of this just leaves us with one kind of mind-bending final thought. You know, we tend to think of creativity as this uniquely human spark. But when an AI can start with total randomness and through this intense process of trial and error generate something entirely new and convincing, what does that tell us about the nature of creation itself?